Hi there, it's Dan here from Young Professionals, and we're delighted to be joined by Lloyds Banking Group today for our Young Professionals podcast. Now, in this podcast series, we're going to be interviewing some of the Lloyds Banking Group apprentices, where we're going to find out a little bit more about who they are, what they do, and ultimately how you at home can find out about how you can join one of the UK's largest banks. So we hope you enjoy our first podcast with Lloyds Banking Group, and over to you, Luke.
Maxon, nice to meet you. Jack, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So let's get started with some introductions. So it'd be great to understand what your role is within the Lloyds Banking Group, and maybe like share a fun fact about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Maxon. I work under Lloyds Banking Corporate Markets, which is the investment banking arm of Lloyds, and I'm a finance analyst. So I'm fresh out of A-levels, joining in the level 4 SEMA apprenticeship with prospects of going on to level 7. So yeah.
Great.
Oh, my name is Jack, and I'm in the economic crime prevention area of Lloyds Banking Group. I'm a software developer apprentice, also a level 4, but aspire to move on to a level 6 and level 7 as well.
Wow, so I can tell this is going to be a really interesting episode. Yeah, some super interesting discussions upcoming. So before we get into discussing exactly what you do, I want to understand your journey into an apprenticeship as a whole. So maybe Jack, starting with you.
I've always been interested in learning on the job. I thrive in a work environment. I did try education in uni for a year. It really didn't work out for me. Unfortunately, I went to uni just after COVID. It was the year after COVID hit. So I didn't really have the regular university experience. There was a lot of pre-recorded lecturers, and there wasn't an opportunity to socialise or interact with both lecturers and other students as much as you'd kind of hope from a uni experience. So after a year, I just decided to apply for something that I knew I would enjoy more. And I wanted something different from pure education as well. I wanted to learn on the job, and I've always loved software engineering as well. So I applied for quite a few apprentices. There were some successes, some failures, but I landed on the Lloyds Banking apprenticeship. I decided to go with this one because I love the culture of the company. I love the future career prospects that I had with the business as well. So I joined as a level 4 apprentice. I've just completed the primary training of it, and in my final assessment now, which is very exciting as well.
That's great.
Yeah, so very similar to Jack. I always felt like I learned better on the job, and I just thought after 13 or so years of education, it was sort of time for something new. I wanted to sort of step outside of the classroom, and before that, I was always really set on going to uni. I was like, I want to go out, have a good time, have the real uni experience. And then sort of through discussions with my parents and teachers, I thought maybe I'll have a look at some apprenticeships. And then when I started reading the benefits and what I'd learned, stuff like that, it was all quite exciting. So I thought I'll apply for a couple. And once I started applying for a good few, I thought, all right, I'm really going to run with this. Like, this is what I want to do. And I applied to quite a few. Got rejected from all of them but Lloyds, so it was quite a long process, but I'm really pleased with where I've ended up, and yeah, that's why.
That's great, thank you. Could you share maybe a project delving into your role a bit deeper so the audience can understand what you do a bit better? Jack, maybe starting with you, do you have a particular project in mind?
Yeah, of course. So I suppose looking at it from a wider team perspective, I'm primarily a back-end software engineer, which means that customers don't really see what I do. It's kind of the inner workings of the applications that we serve to customers and other areas of the business. But as a wider project, I was working with the credit cards team for the primary banking apps. So there was Lloyds Bank, Halifax, Bank of Scotland, and MBNA. And we were working to completely redesign the way that the credit card, the primary page for the credit cards looked. So, making it more modern, making it more minimal, adding merchant logos, things like that. And I was a part of that transition. Additionally, moving from on-premises cloud solutions to off-premises cloud solutions such as Google Cloud was really exciting with those emerging technologies. So it's great to be part of that transition that not just my business area but the entire bank is progressing with at the moment.
Perfect. That sounds amazing, Maxon.
So I think I mentioned earlier, like a lot of what I do is like reconciliation. There was this one project where I was reconciling cash balances on 2 different programs we used to record these within the bank, and I think like the bit that I enjoyed so much about it was like really seeing the scale of what I'm doing, like dealing with like billions of pounds, like millions of pounds, seeing these trades coming in. It's all quite exciting, and it's like almost a big puzzle. I view it as like what I do. It's sort of like trying to work out why discrepancies are happening and sort of thinking about how we can fix them or who I need to report to get it sorted. So yeah, that's a project that I really enjoyed.
It seems like you both have a really good idea of what your role entails, and also have a literacy within your department and other departments that surround and support those roles. As students potentially watching, how would you initially, maybe before joining Lloyds Banking Group, understand about the roles a bit more, and maybe if you have a couple of resources you'd like to share of your personal journeys in which you were able to learn from, it'd be great to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, I can't think of any resources particularly off the top of my head. But I think there's an idea with software development that all that you do is coding. And for some people, that is the case. But for others, it's not. It's there's a very wide scope for what you can do within software development and software engineering roles. So I really enjoyed working on my final project for the apprenticeship that I'm doing, having the opportunity to work more with the business side of things, and actually develop a solution before implementing it. Focusing on business requirements and discussing with other engineers the best way to go about certain implementations. So I think first and foremost, it's important to look at software engineering as in the wider sense, as opposed to just assuming it's all coding. But also it's important to kind of research what software development is like in the workplace, because students that for example are in computer science, either GCSE or A-level, or even at university, you're taught very specifically about the the material they want you to learn, and there isn't much opportunity to learn about what you're to do in an actual workplace environment. So, for example, I find it very rare that things I would have learnt about in my computer science A-level, like searching algorithms, for example, they're very rarely used in an actual implementation when you're working on a project such as the credit card project that I mentioned. But I think if you have a passion for software development, also consider which area of businesses that you want to go into. So if you're really interested in finance, then a bank is a great place to go. But if you're interested in game development, for example, then it's going to be a completely different world, and the things that you'll have to learn both in role and beforehand are going to be completely different. So it's just important to research in general.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. That's really helpful. Thank you very much, Maxon.
So with my role, I'm quite lucky because I work in markets. It's sort of all around us all the time. I think the news is a massive source of valuable knowledge coming into a role like mine. So in terms of doing reconciliations and stuff like that, once we find a discrepancy, we need to give a reason for that. And I think the news helps massively, because no matter what it is, whether it's a conflict or something like COVID, it will have had some sort of an impact on the market, and that will provide an explanation of why we maybe have done really well on one day and not so well another day. And as well as this, I think one of the hardest adjustments coming as a student into the workplace was familiarity with like professional terminology. Like, I know Lloyds is very heavy on like acronyms and stuff like that, and I was thinking, oh my, like, what is this? But I found Investopedia really helps with that. It sort of gives you a lot of industry terminology and you can build up a bit of familiarity with it that way. And I found it a really useful resource, yeah.
Yeah, that's really good, because actually one of the things that we do recommend to our students, as like a top tip for acing applications, or just in general standing out from the crowd, is having that commercial awareness. And
Yeah.
it's quite easy to, off your own back, just research the sector, research as much as you can, use Investopedia, look at the news. So go on to Bloomberg, look at
exactly.
Bloomberg TV type thing. That's really great. So I guess if you had one tip then maybe for students, talking about the application process, how would you get into an apprenticeship today? What are your best tips for getting into an apprenticeship?
Do you know, my biggest tip is to research the company all the companies that you want to apply for. So if you don't know much about the company and you're just, I suppose, blindly applying for as many companies as you can, you may get some initial interview offers, but when you go into that interview and you start getting asked culture questions, you have to tailor those answers to the company you're applying for. So, understanding the core principles of the companies you're applying for is really imperative. And also, I don't know if this is a bit of a controversial opinion, but only apply for the things you're passionate about. So I firmly believe that if you're applying for an apprenticeship in an area that you're not completely interested in, you may find that you really enjoy it, but in terms of the application process itself, you're going to perform a lot better in an interview if you're really passionate about the subject and you have new ideas to bring to the table than if you're not as interested.
Yeah, so obviously there I'd agree and say that there's the typical ones of sort of knowing about the company, knowing about the role you're applying for. But I think a really important one that's sometimes overlooked is demonstrating a real love for learning, because going into an apprenticeship, you're not going to know everything like that you're going in to learn about. Obviously, it's a whole new environment. Before I joined Lloyds, I didn't really have any sort of contact with banking or anything like that. It was simply an interest in markets and what I'd read personally, what I'd gathered from work experience, which wasn't that much. So I think a real push for a love of learning demonstrates that you're really eager to get involved and get stuck in, and you're really not expected to know it all. So I think it's very imperative that you push forward, that you want to know it all, but you don't yet, so you're willing to work at that.
That's a really good mindset to have, actually, because you can research and really understand the company, but also I'm conscious that theory doesn't always add up into reality. Navigating apprenticeships aren't always easy. So, students coming into an apprenticeship, probably off the back of school or first year uni, it's always challenging, even with a high level of research in the sector or the role that you're particularly applying to. It's always challenging to get going and hit the ground running. I'm sure you both have faced challenges along the way to get to where you are now. It'd be great to understand maybe a few examples of some challenges you faced up till now. Maybe Jack, starting with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think coming from an academic area to a workplace, it can be quite difficult to kind of grasp at first. It's very, very daunting starting at a big company like Lloyds after, especially in our case, not really working in a large organization like that beforehand. It's very different moving from a part-time weekend job to a full-time role with a huge company. So I think it's really important to know and trust that your team are there to help. Again, that there isn't an expectation that you know everything. You're there to learn, and as long as you have that passion and that drive to learn new skills and to take criticism as well, You're always going to get constructive criticism. It's the best way to learn in a workplace environment, and as long as you feel comfortable with taking that criticism, which is definitely a skill, and it does take a little bit of time to learn. But once you accept that is the best way for you to grow in your career and personally as well, you'll really start to thrive. So I think in the first month it can be very, very difficult, especially if you have a bit of a rocky start like I did. I had a couple of issues at first, kind of getting onboarded, and that did knock my confidence a little bit, to be honest. But as soon as I realised that everybody was there for me and everyone wanted to support me, and they saw my passion to learn quickly and move at pace, I really started to flourish and grow in that environment.
That's amazing. Thank you.
I think one of the biggest challenges I sort of faced was building my network when I first got in there, because it can be quite daunting being a student entering this workplace, and you sort of feel like quite a small fish in this ginormous pond. But once you get speaking to people, you actually realise that as an apprentice, you're in quite this unique position that lots of people are curious about. So no matter how senior they are, who they always have an interest in what you're doing. And I think building a network is really a core principle of developing yourself throughout your career as an apprentice, and they'll come in really handy along the way. So definitely worth a struggle.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, two really insightful pieces there. I mean, I always say, asking questions, no question is ever off the table, and also networking with individuals, it can really boost your career, because also you must be conscious of where next,
Exactly.
within Lloyds Banking Group, so how do you progress from an apprenticeship into maybe different departments or higher up through your current department. On the subject of long-term goals, where do you see yourself kind of progressing? Is your current role like really interesting? But like, maybe what are your thoughts on like kind of your future progressions?
Firstly, I very recently moved to a new role. So out of the apprenticeship role and into a regular software development role, for want of a better word for that. But I think in terms of progression, Lloyds have great progression opportunities. There are a lot of internal resources that you can that we can look at to kind of prepare for interviews and understand where we may want to go in future. Generally, I think that there's so many resources online that you can look at to understand the pathways you can take, but kind of understanding the opportunities that you do have in front of you sets you up for, I suppose, to strive for those opportunities when it comes time. I think for some people who may want to progress very quickly, there's always the opportunity to do that. And I believe generally, similarly to as I've just done, as long as you display a passion and drive and you show that you've learnt a lot in your apprenticeship, you can move pretty quickly to I suppose, a full-time position in the role you want to be in. Following that, again, just continuing to understand where you can grow, where you can go next. If you have a passion for software development, for example, but you also you're really interested in the business side of things, then eventually you can strive to be, for example, an engineering lead. And I know that for some people, an apprenticeship is, there is somewhat of a focus on earning a decent amount of money as in an early career stage, and there are opportunities to do that, and I think an apprenticeship is a great way to do that as well, because you have career opportunities that will potentially come earlier than the opportunities for others for higher, or I suppose, I don't really know the word for it, but better roles. you have the opportunity to move internally quicker than others may coming in from external.
Yeah, so currently I'm really content in my team. I really enjoy what I do, but Lloyds is really fluid as an employer, with moving about, moving up and down the ranks, into different departments, all sorts. And they're really supportive with that. We've got an internal jobs portal where you can search for stuff like that. But at the minute, I want to try and get my chartership, so my level 7 accountancy qualification, and then maybe explore new avenues. But for now, I think the team around me is really supportive, and they really have my best interest at heart, and they're really trying to push me as an apprentice primarily over me as an employee. They're really caring for me and making sure my exams are getting done. I've got time to be revising, stuff like that. So for now, I'm really content where I am.
So moving on to our next section, we're going to be diving into a bit deeper, kind of your departments, and how they sit under Lloyds Banking Group as a whole. So Maxon, am I right in saying your role is considered a back office function?
Yeah, so in terms of the investment bank, it's sort of more of a back office support function of the main trading floor. So at the minute, a lot of it is ad hoc requests coming from different offices and sort of consulting us on what needs to be done to rectify changes.
That's great. And actually, it's great that you say that, because there is a misconception that back office maybe isn't quite as good as maybe front office, or there's a bit of like a stigma between the two. What would you say to that?
So from feedback from my managers and stuff like that, if I'd started 20 years or so ago, maybe it would have been like that, but I've seen none of it working there. Like, people talk to me just as normal as they would talk to other people they work with when their own departments, and they're always willing for shadowing opportunities, stuff like that. And sitting on a trading floor means that you're networking with people from all different sort of departments, so there's no exclusion, anything like that. And I think I haven't personally experienced a stigma from any of that, so it's been a really positive experience so far.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it also seems as if you can kind of move as well. That's great, because a lot of students will be thinking, if I commit myself to an apprenticeship, however long, over X amount of years, will I always have to do that? And the answer is absolutely not.
No, exactly. And sitting in the same place as all of these people, shadowing is a really common thing. You can go sit with who you like, learn about their role, build rapport with them, and then if a job opportunity comes up and they know that you've got an avid interest in it, you'll be consulted on it. It's all about building your network and utilising them to progress throughout your career.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Jack, how is your work counting towards your current department success, and maybe does that feed back into the overall Lloyds Banking Group's vision?
Yeah, do you know, I think if anybody is watching this that works at Lloyds, they're going to love me for saying this, but I feel like I'm part of the business as a whole. I really feel part of the community. I think, so I've not really had much of an opportunity in my new role yet to kind of work on a project, but in terms of my previous role, I felt part of the company, both because my team were really supportive. It's a lovely community, no matter which business area you're in. Everyone is exceptionally supportive, helpful. You have social events as well, so it's not all about work. There are times to get away from the screen and do something else. But it's also for me about the customer. I enjoyed seeing, even though I didn't work with it directly, the changes that we were making for customers. I, as a customer of Lloyds Bank myself, I have been for quite a while. I enjoyed being able to see some of the transformations that were taking place. So I definitely felt part of the community, both from an internal perspective and externally as well. It's just nice to see and nice to be part of something that's a lot bigger than me, I suppose.
No, that's really good. And if you're almost motivated as well by the company's success, that translates probably into better work, which also then probably translate into your better personal like image, and this is something actually we talk about a lot, is building your own kind of brand, personal brand, in whichever workplace you're in. How would you say do you build a personal brand? Because a lot of students always ask, personal brand, I want to network, but how do I actually build that up?
I think if you feel really passionate about something, just anything, you will always you'll demonstrate your true colours. So for software development, I absolutely adore it. I love working with code, whether it's customer facing or business facing. And for me, that helps me to work better. It gives me that drive to do more every day. I want to learn something new. I want to grow. So part of my personal identity is that I'm a quick learner, and that I love to learn about new technologies. I like to move at pace. I don't want to be left behind. And I think, part of that obviously comes from a drive to move forward in my career very quickly, but also working with the speed at which technology changes. I feel part of that transformation because it's what I enjoy most. So I think that's key. Just being part of or trying to kind of embody the work you're doing and the technologies you're using and what you're passionate about.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think a personal brand is really important, especially as an apprentice, because you are coming in a position below many other people, and you do want to work your way up. So I think people's perception on you really does gauge how fast that's going to occur. So as an apprentice, if you're joining in the first couple of months, it might be a bit quiet, and your manager might say to you, feel free to go home at 4:30 today. We've not got much on. And if you're up packing your bag at 4:30 on the dot and you're like, see you later, guys. I think it's really important to always make an effort to try and do to the best of your ability and show an avidness to learn. I really enjoy what I do. And sometimes when my manager's like, all right, maybe head home, mate, there's not a lot on, I'm always there trying to push for more things that I can do to better me at my work and sort of try and make their jobs easier as well. And I think they really respect that and acknowledge it well. So hopefully, as I go forward in my career, that reputation will carry. And therefore, if I do look at changing a department, my manager might go to me like, yeah, he's a good kid. He's always willing to try his best, and he's always there to make your job easier. It will eventually pay off in the long run for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the kind of key points of an apprenticeship as well, is that you have so many opportunities to learn that you start getting the enjoyment out of learning
exactly
in the workplace.
100%.
Wow. I mean, what a great way to kind of come to a close. I guess before we finish, it'd be great to get a few hot questions in. So what's one benefit of doing an apprenticeship at Lloyds Banking Group, would you say, from your personal experience? Maxon?
I think because there's such a big community of grads and apprentices, you've got so many people to talk to whenever you come into any sort of difficulty. And as well, because there's so many of us, it's sort of, you're really well appreciated, and Lloyds act as if it's a privilege to have you, as well as you seeing it as a privilege to be working for them. And I think it's really important to feel valued by your employer, and Lloyds do that really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that completely. That's hit the nail on the head. It's like a two-way value, I suppose. Lloyds obviously get benefit from the apprentice. It's new talent. We bring new ideas in, and we help the business grow. But on the other side of things, Lloyds have an amazing team of people. They have amazing support opportunities, and they kind of give you everything that you need as an apprentice and as an employee to enjoy your work, enjoy your work-life balance, and get the most out of not just your career, but life as a whole, I suppose.
And so what's the most fun that you've had currently in your role at Lloyds Banking Group. So let's leave it on a real fun high note. Maybe one example of a time in which you really enjoyed your apprenticeship journey so far.
Definitely the axe throwing. that was exceptionally enjoyable from a social standpoint. But apprenticeship wise, just as a whole, I've really loved the learning. I've really enjoyed building with exceptionally experienced engineers to learn about new technologies, to learn about the way that the business operates, to learn about the tools that we use, and really feel integrated into the technology side of things.
That's amazing. Maxon?
So Lloyds have like this bespoke sort of activity for their apprentices, which is called the Biz Cafe. And basically all of the apprentices are divvied up into teams, all different people from Scotland, Bristol, London, and you're basically running this fake cafe. And it's just a really great way of meeting new people. Like the other week I went out for drinks with the people from the Edinburgh office, Bristol and London all combined because we were in London at the same time. It's just a great way of building your network. It's a really good way of having fun, and it's just a nice break from the actual work side of things. You can sort of join a call with these people that I'd now deem to be my mates and have a bit of a chat about how work's going, and then you get down to making some fun decisions about this fake cafe you're running. So that's been a really positive experience too.
It's been a great pleasure having both of you on this episode, and you know, it's great to see that you're both enjoying your apprenticeship journeys at Lloyds Banking Group. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
You.